It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker today, Natalie Morse. So Natalie has her PhD in environmental engineering and has been working in data science for the past 3 years. She formerly worked for BMW and now is at a startup focused on auto aftermarket parts supply chain. She lives in South Carolina and runs her own small business on the side as well, helping people decide if a PhD program is right for them. Natalie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. So bummed I couldn't be there in person, but excited to see everybody participating. And I'm really going to echo what Stefan just said. A lot of what he was saying, I was like nodding along with. So excited to talk with you all about that. I will keep this pretty informal. So am I laggy? I look laggy on my screen. All right, you let me know if I'm too laggy, but if you have questions, I am laggy. Okay, well, I can't switch that up right now, so I'll do my best, but is my sound coming through? Is it better to turn off my video? Let me know if I should turn off my video. Sound is fine. All right, let me turn off my video so I don't get laggy off with you, but okay, I'll stay here. Okay, but I'll do my best. So let me know if you have questions throughout the talk. I'll be pretty informal, but again, I'll have Q&A at the end as well. So let me share my screen if I can do this. Share the PowerPoint and slideshow. Oops, oops. Are you seeing the notes or are you seeing just the, I hate when it does this.
It's just your Zoom picture right now.
Okay, hold on. Desktop to share. Are you seeing the PowerPoint?
Not yet. Oh, here we go. Yep.
Does it all
now
look
if you
good?
move your Zoom out of the way, and now we can see the citizen data science or citizen and citizen data science.
Okay. Thanks for bearing with me. All right, so yeah, I really want to talk about the citizen side, the human side of things and how we actually engage, because I think, a lot of you might be technically minded like myself, and it's easy to get lost in those details. So what we're going to be covering is, in my mind, a tale of two cities, or how two different organizations are approaching data science. And I'll share my experiences with that. Of note, these are my thoughts and interpretations. So each of the organizations, approach things how they do. And these are just my thoughts. So take everything with a grain of salt. I'm going to be speaking about what worked, what didn't work, what your average associate wants you to know, and where your data scientists might be getting things wrong, and lesson learned overall. Okay, so my talk is about the citizen, and this is a shameless plug to get my son in this photo, but basically, how many of you have had the opportunity to train and work with your spouse in a business setting? Anyone? I'm looking in the chat. Sorry, I'll look at the chat over here. Nothing shameless about that. I love it. Okay, so yeah, so I have. And so talk about work following you home. It really followed me home, and it gave me great insight into both sides of this coin. So we worked at BMW together. He's more in operations, I'm more in IT. And I had the opportunity to work with him and colleagues developing data science initiatives throughout the manufacturing process. So really interesting, and I'll kind of hit on that throughout my talk, but it's just important to remember that these are people trying to do their job, and every person is not a robot. They can't approach things all the same, and we need to be aware of that when we develop our expectations as well as our curriculums and all of that. So that's my shameless plug to get my son in the photo. Let's see. So, okay, the cities. So I'm going to be talking about my experience at the Fortune 500 and at a startup, with the caveat that the startup is more like a spin out. So we have a parent organization because, in a typical startup, you wouldn't really need data science, citizen data science as much, because you would just have the data scientists, right, kind of working on the product. But so there is the need here to work with a broader organization and bring people on board. So that's kind of how those two things go together. So let's get to city number one, my time with the Fortune 500 and how they approach data science. So they approached it in a myriad of ways. I don't think they had one single approach. They hired consultants to do things and then maybe teach people. They invested in company-wide software solutions that, some stuck around, some didn't. They were really just trying to give people tools, which is great. They did realize the importance of data integrity and governance and how that really allows all of the data science initiatives to take place. And I will say that they were kind of developing them in concert, which can be problematic because you need the foundation before you can move on to the data science. So that's a big lesson learned there, I believe. And they also have dedicated data science teams, similar to what Stefan was saying, but we didn't quite have the hub and spoke model. We had the hub model, and we would go out and interact and work with different organizations as needed, but it wasn't as, I would say, regimented like a spoke, this is your, thrust. It was kind of on an ad hoc basis. And then we would let departments and associates figure it out because we're like, hey, we give you some tools, go do it. And, whatever you need, let us know. So all of these things kind of played together, and in different ways, they were effective. I'm going to just compare broadly some wins and some not wins. So overall, business intelligence software is a big hit with your typical business user because they want to do these things, right? They want to have the opportunity to have control of resolving their own problems. On the not win side, when you give Power BI or Tableau to people, then it's great, right? They have a tool, but when they're communicating out these broader results, if they're not structured or streamlined, then different audiences might find it more difficult to interpret, understand, and trust the results. So consistency is something that we were working to develop to make sure that each business unit could understand and use the tools in a similar way. On the win side, more people became to value data and the data decision-making process. So really, throughout the organization, it became very clear that data was important and people were getting on board. So that was like a big win. On the not win side, the data science, the prediction, that kind of thing is difficult without combining multiple data sets. And that's usually a task that stalled out with our data engineering, teams, because they needed to do a lot of that cleaning, preparation, and whatnot. And so again, it's a little bit foundational that we need to make sure we get that right before we go out to the broader business users and say, here, use this tool, and then they find problems in their data or, confusion, and then they give up. So on the win side, people were eager and willing to learn, which I'm sure Stefan found as well with his data curious people. But on the not win side, learning to code takes time. And, it may be needed outside their normal working hours or things, depending on how their days would go. And that's just difficult to ask of people, really. So one really cool thing that we did was a multi-day workshop. And so I kind of led this data science, the Citizen Data Science Initiative, where, our plant in South Carolina had just about 11,000 people there, so pretty big. And, each department had their own issues and problems that they wanted to solve. So we said, okay, pitch your ideas. Like, let you guys come up with your own problems and pitch what you think needs to be solved. And so we let them do that. We let them frame their business problems. We made sure that they had access to data prior to the event. We, let them know that this was a multi-day event, so they knew they had to invest time and resources. So again, I am echoing Stefan, like, you need to get that commitment up front because everybody says they have a problem. But then when you say, okay, yeah, let's give me 2 people for 2 days, they're suddenly less likely to want to solve that problem. So really important to kind of get that buy-in from the beginning. We had a clear definition of success. We paired data scientists with these business teams to work on solving the problems. And we did use a drag and drop software by Einblick to avoid the need to code. And so that was really great. We didn't need to spend multiple days teaching them how to do basic code. So that was really helpful to get get us, moving quickly and get those quicker wins, or at least let people see that it's possible. And we did present results to senior management, which was great. They got to see their employees taking ownership, and it was a good experience. I believe the most successful outcome was just teaching business users to frame the problem in data science terms. Because here's an example, anecdotal, but this one guy in the manufacturing process was like, so you measure, gaps or things, whatever measurements in a process. And he's like, well, I want to see if this one matches up with, if I get an error here, if I get it up with another error. And I go, okay, well, what would that tell you? It would just tell you at that particular moment in time, you got two errors that coincide. Like, it doesn't say that one, wait, that doesn't help us predict and solve these problems ahead of time. It just says, yep, you got two problems. So then he was like, oh, so what we tried to do then is look, upstream, let's say an hour before, could we use that data to then predict problems we might see, and so on. So it became really clear that they could ask better questions just by teaching them, how the data can be used in data science terms and just, in general. So that was the most important part that I found out of that workshop. Okay, I'm going to move on to city number 2, the startup, where I have been recently. And so, like I said, they have this parent organization that, again, has legacy, has people who, as you can imagine, are on the warehouse, right? They are picking up tires. You have people who are marketing managers, right? You've got the whole spectrum. And so they created a center of excellence and, to improve data literacy and get more people involved. So then they created out of this a data science accelerator mentorship program. And I'll get into that because it's pretty interesting. So what was the win? So they opened this up to all associates, like people stocking tires. And then, like I said, the managers or the account managers. And I think that's pretty awesome. It shows that they value everyone. It gives everyone in the process the ability to, have a say, to learn and upskill themselves, which, all the HR data right now is just saying is really important for retention. So that's great. What was a problem or not win here is that the accelerator is extremely time consuming from both sides, right? From the mentorship side, as well as the people who apply. So that's a hurdle, right? If you only have so many hours in a day, you have to do your normal job. And then this extra thing on top of it, it can definitely be a hurdle. What we saw as another win was using existing curriculum. So Stefan was talking about hybrid approach and whatnot. And yeah, we just use what exists. And then we use the mentor to fill in the gaps. So we use like a human, which again is not scalable. But for this, it did work out very well. So with the curriculum, it was a big curriculum. It was a big investment of time, right? Learning the code. The curriculum is like 80 hours, give or take what the person kind of does. And so that's a huge commitment. And so again, you need the management approval and you need those people committed. A big win was that these are true data scientists, citizen data scientists when they graduate. Like they know how to use Python, like they know how to create a model. So it's quite a win, in my opinion. A not win is the infrastructure and everything to support them when they go back to their role, right? So that needs to be worked through and at least understood or created as these people continue in their role. So what worked? Yep, we wanted to have so I guess we've done this program for like the past 2 years. So I think they've done like 3 or 4 iterations. And so you basically have a manager submit, well, you tell your manager, hey, I would like to do this. And then they submit your name and whatnot, and they pick. So we can't pick everyone. So I think maybe 50 people might submit and we might pick like 4. So it does become a source of pride when you do get selected, but of course it would be great to be a little bit broader. We do pair the business users with the data scientists. They met weekly. And so that was a really great way to kind of bring them along. They did, so it spans like 6 to 9 months. They use Python, Tableau, etc. And then again, we present results to senior management. And they love it. They love it. They love seeing these solutions come out. They want to think about productionalizing them, about making them into real solutions. So a big win there, in my opinion. So let's keep it moving. Okay, I think I'm doing really good on time, but you let me know. So what your average associate wants you to know. So first off, they care a lot. You know, they aren't there phoning it in. They do want to have an impact. They do want their company to succeed, but they've already learned like 10,000 other tools. So why is this important? Why spend the time and the energy? I think it's important to communicate that. And I know Stefan was hitting on that about data literacy being important. But again, when you're introducing new tools and things, it's worth having the conversation about the impact you can have on the business, as well as your own personal career development as well. Their day-to-day job always takes priority because, again, they are hired to do a job, and data science is not necessarily the top thing on their job description. So we have to be cognizant of that and think about how we're going to approach that. Most people don't want to learn to code. That's the truth. Some people do, but so as new tools come on, we have to think about integrating them with people in an easier to use fashion. Okay, one more thing. What your data scientists get wrong, and I am one, so I think I can say this with a little bit of humor, but you know, we see everything and we think it's all super important, and it is, but trying to teach everything at once can be overwhelming and they're not going to use it. So I would say start with a use case, get them, you know, start to finish on that. Yeah, they're not going to use all the tools in the toolbox, but they're going to use things that they need. And then you can always add on more if you have more time or that person gets more sophisticated. Helping them frame the problem is the most useful thing that you can do. So as a technical person, sometimes it's really tempting to jump in and be like, here, let me just code this, it'll work and it'll save you so much time and it'll be amazing. But, you know, again, stopping to ask the question of like, is this worthwhile? Is this a problem that we really need to solve? And how can we think about smart ways to use the data versus just jumping into code? I think that's really important because then the citizen data scientist becomes, much more thoughtful in the questions that they're asking. I'd also recommend not coming with pre-baked material. You know, book a room, book a time, share the screen, because, you know, it's easy to have their eyes glaze over when they start looking at code, and then they're like, okay, well, yeah, it's easy, they'll just get it done, you know, and that's that. But the goal here is to kind of bring them along with you and to see how things are done. So that's my general thoughts there. Lessons learned. So I know I've kind of given broad lessons, but I'm going to wrap it up. So yeah, I found it very interesting, the impact that giving access to everyone to training and upskilling really has on the organization, because, you know, right, each organization is only as good as the people within it. And so when people feel valued, they are more likely to bring their ideas. The organization will find those valuable without a doubt. And so I found that really interesting and a good way to proceed. On the flip side, you know, not everyone wants or needs to become a citizen data scientist. Like, operational roles are valuable. So I guess kind of what Stefan was saying is, you know, to cultivate those people who do have an interest, give everyone the option, but, you know, it's like anything. You give everyone the option, there's only going to be like, you know, a 2% take rate. And that's fine, because, you know, we need people to also be involved with the day-to-day of running the business as well. But I would recommend having more data scientists out there to avoid some bottlenecks. So that definitely happens. Helping them frame and understand their problems is the biggest bang for your buck, because even if, right, let's say you just did a one-day workshop on, you know, how to frame problems, what data can be used for, that would make their interactions with, you know, let's say you have a central data science team so much more impactful. They could ask you really critical questions that could be answered with data science versus, I just don't really understand how this works. Can you just like, look in the data and let me know? That's not a great question. And, and getting them to say, okay, we have this problem and I have this data set and I want to be able to predict classification, yes or no down here. That's a much more impactful question that can, impact the business and solve real problems. So again, I know I beat that horse, but I'm very, very on board with that. And finally, data engineering and data governance are foundational, and giving people tools without that kind of foundation or support is going to make them frustrated and confused. So those are my broad lessons learned. Thank you so much. I'm going to try to turn my video back on if I'm not too buggy, but thanks, guys. I don't know if I zoomed quickly, but let me know if you have questions.
Thank you, Natalie. Any questions in the room? Yeah, go ahead. Or Mark, do you want to pass over the mic?
Hello. Okay. Hi, Natalie. Nice to talk. You mentioned one of your wins is helping people understand the value of data. But do you have any experience, or maybe even Stefan, if he's still on, have experience helping the business users or non-data scientists understand or trust the data more and also trust the output of the model?
Ooh, that's a great question. Yes. So much experience with that, because nobody wants to trust the model and nobody wants to believe that it's smarter than they are. And what really works is to have them, ask the questions and then them realize that, yeah, using my Excel or using my normal methods is only going to get me so far. And when I use these more sophisticated methods, have them go through the pipeline with you a little bit, so that way they can start to see that 1 + 1 = 2. And so I definitely have experience with that from the floor all the way up to like the C-suite. So it doesn't get easier. I think the C-suite is more understanding of data science and models because they understand the technology, and they basically all their peers are using it, but it still requires you to very much back up your work with, this is the data I used, be very explicit about, the time frame and what context it was used. And I spend a lot of time on that before I dig into the model. So let people know, again, the foundation, AKA the data and how it was used. Yep.
Cool. If any more questions in the room, feel free to raise your hand. One from the Q&A, Natalie. A few actually from the Q&A here. Can you elaborate on the decision criteria to pick up the candidates for program? I think that they're referencing maybe you guys limited who actually would be allowed to come into the whatever the programming for education internally.
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, we were limited by space, right? We only had like 4 mentors. So that was that limit. And then it was based on, their business case, like the question that they wanted to answer, and then, manager support. And so, right, if you have a tie across the board, then I guess you have to make some calls in terms of like, well, this organization got one last time, we're going to spread it over here. But really it was like, the business question that they wanted to answer and, their commitment, as long as they, stated, okay, I will do 4 hours a week or whatnot. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Maybe we have time for one more question. Oh boy. There was a good one in here and now I've lost it. Anybody else in the room? Yeah, I don't know if you can actually see the questions coming through or not.
I can see the one in the chat. She's asking
about go for it.
Management and resistance from the organization. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of it comes from the top, which is like not a great answer, but right. So having the top get on board with it is very important. And that has to come from other peers, right? Like you at the bottom, it's not as easy for you to influence the top truly, right? So their peers kind of getting on board with things is really important. And just how is it, the psychology of it, like you see your peer having a win over there in department A, and you're like, well, geez, I want my department to be in the spotlight. So it is a little bit about getting that first win and having other people excited about it versus trying to get everybody on the same page and then everybody move up the ladder. I think it's easiest to start with some quick wins.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Round of applause for Natalie. Thanks for joining us today.